we are going to talk about events. So, I'll show you the homework that you're going to have to make first. So here it is. There's two actually, but the only interesting one is this one here. Okay, so this is what you're going to make. What's it called? Word counting tool. Let's look at this one here. So, for example, here's some text in here. This works okay for words and single spaces. And then what this is supposed to do, what this application is supposed to do is count how many words there are. So how many words are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So it should give back 8. Okay? On the other hand, it also can count the characters here. Okay? In which case, I don't know how many characters there are, but maybe it's 41. Okay? Does everyone understand the purpose of this project? Okay, so this is what you have to, this is what you're going to make for homework. Let me ask you how this should work. Suppose that you don't have to program it, but you want it done by somebody else. Okay, so you get to tell them what you want, how you want it to work. So how should it work? What do you want to happen? When do you want to see this, the value here? If you were designing this and asking your employee to make it, when do you want to be able to see this? When what? Well, I mean, after what action that occurs on the GUI do you want this to be visible? Do you want to see the number of characters?
After you click on the count word or count characters.
Okay, first of all, yeah, these two things here are, does anybody know what these are called? What kind of form, what kind of control this is?
Checklist? No.
Anybody know what those are called? Those are called radio buttons. And radio buttons are different than check boxes. What's the difference between a radio button and a checkbox? What? Yeah. Radio button, you can only select one, but you know what a checkbox looks like, right? A little square here, a little box here, right? In that case, you can check more than one. Okay, so radio buttons can only check one. Okay, so what did you say? When you click on one of these radio buttons, then you would like to see this, right? The result. Is there any other activity on the screen where you would like your employee to implement it so that you could see the number of characters or the number of words? Yeah, as you type, right? You might like that to happen, right? Does everyone understand? Okay, so now this lecture is about events, and I think we talked about an event related to typing in a text box. By the way, this whole thing is just a text box. It's just a big text box. Okay, so that's exactly what it is. It's just a text box. Okay, so I think didn't we do it one time before where when we typed in the text box something, we captured that somehow, I forget. Didn't we do that somewhere? I think we did it. Pretty sure I can't remember what the project was. But we did something where when we were typing in here, we picked up that event. Nobody remembers that? I'm sure we did it, but I can't remember where it was. Anyway, this is an event. Okay, what kinds of events have we handled so far in our work in this semester? What kind of events have we handled? What, just the button click, I think, and was there anything else? I think there was this one, and then was there anything else? Oh, right, the timer, the slider. Remember that slider? And as you slide along, that generated different events, and then we handled those events. Remember that? So we handled at least those two, and I can't remember about this one. So we've handled two kinds of events. Okay, the button click event and the timer event, the timer sliding event, right? So there are other events, lots of other events that you can get access to in Visual Basic. And one of them is when someone changes something in a text box. So that's an event. And so you can cause some code to run when that event happens. Just like when we click on a button, some code also runs, right? Okay? So we can also do the same thing when someone clicks in here. So when someone clicks in here and starts typing, we can capture that. We can have some code run when that happens. And what do we want that code to do, simply speaking? What do we want it to do? Well, if this is selected, then what do we want it to do? To count the characters in the text box. And if this is selected, what do we want the code to do? To count the words, right? So we have this event, I forget, I think it's called text change. Okay, we'll see what it's called exactly in a few minutes, but I think it's called text change or something like that. So when the text change event happens, we will put some code in our event handler, in our text change event handler, and the code will be what again? If this is selected, then put the count here. If this is selected, put the count characters. If this is selected, put the count words. Okay? Right? So it sounds like we're going to have to write some kind of function to count the characters. And then we're going to run that. Or we're going to have to write some kind of function to count the words and then run that. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you understand the logic here? This is what we need to do? Now, counting characters is pretty easy. If you have this, maybe I'll type it here so that it'll go onto the video. If you have that, let's see. One second. Just have to do one thing here. Okay, so who's this person? So if I save this, then I can say that that counts against you for class participation. Right? I could be nasty and do that, right? So that's proof that this person wasn't paying attention. Okay. So anyway, let me just put this here. Okay, it's pretty easy to count the number of characters. So if you have a string like this, okay. Okay, so if you have a string like that and you assign it to a variable, then to count the characters, strings are actually objects. Strings are actually objects, and maybe I'll make that bigger. Strings are actually objects, and remember, objects have properties. Can somebody give me an object that has a property? Any objects you know about that have properties? Anybody? Well, all of our controls are objects. So can anybody answer it now? Give me an object that has a property. There are lots of examples, right? For example, what? Anybody? How about button.color? Isn't there a property like that? Or button.text, right? So the button has the text property, right? And all our controls have many different properties, right? When we look at Visual Studio, and if I click on anything, like here I click on the button, here I can see all the different properties of that button, right? And I can access the properties by giving the button name dot that property, right? Everyone knows about this, right? Okay, so actually text is an object. Text is an object, and so it also has properties. And I can access the property, this property. Okay? And what do you think that gives me? It doesn't give me the count of the words. It gives me the count of the characters. So how many characters are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16, I think. Okay, so this would be equal to 16. Okay, does everyone get this? Okay, so it's going to be pretty easy to get to do this part. Remember I said I want a function to count the characters. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the, how do we refer to the text inside a text box? I forget myself. Anybody not remember? So when someone fills in, is it just text? It's just textbox.text, right? Right? So let's say this text box is called text, I don't know, something. Text, what should we call this thing anyway? Anybody want to give it a name? What should I call this text box? I don't know. Let's call it TXT word. Okay? So how do I access what's inside here? TXT word.text, right? Right? That will capture whatever is typed in here, right? And that will just be a long string, right? So then I can just feed that into this variable here, for example, and then just do this variable dot length to get how many characters. Okay, so everybody get the strategy here, or the way we might do this? Okay, so that's part of what we need to do. And how about here? So here we're going to need something else. We're going to have to, suppose I wanted to know how many words are here. I don't think anybody knows how to do that. Does anybody have any idea how to do that? Anybody done any programming before?
First erase the space, extra spaces.
Well, I can't hear you.
You have to consider a lot of things, but let's say that it's simple. You have to consider each space. What is how to a space when it's a word?
Right, okay, that's right. She said, what do we mean by a word? We can think of it simply. We can do it simply. Now, it's not going to work perfectly, but as our first try, we could say, what do we mean by a word? Whenever it breaks by a space, right, then there's a new word, right? So if there's a space, then there's a new word. If there's a space, then it's, now that's not a perfect mapping of what we really mean by a word, but it's not bad, right? In fact, that's all we're going to do, at least today. But so somehow we want something that will break this up by means of where the spaces are. Now, there's a function in many programming languages called that, split. There's a function in many programming languages called split. And there's one in Visual Basic, also visualbasic.net as well. Okay? And for most programming languages, this is what you would do. You would just do this. Like that. So first of all, do you notice there's a space in here? Okay? So the quote, space, quote means split it on the space. Now suppose you wanted to split it some other way. Suppose you wanted to split it on comma. Then you could put that. Then it would define a new part when there was a comma. Or suppose you wanted to split it on period. Okay, you could do anything. You could split it on any character. Okay? But we want to split it on what?
Space.
On space, right? Now, so this is what, so here's what we could do. Here's how we would run it. Okay, do you see that? So before I did input text length, so it has, the input text has a length property. Now, is this called a property or is this called something else? Is this, when we have brackets there, is that called a property? Not usually, it's usually called a method. Right, this is a method, right? So this is a method. I don't want to call it a property, I call it a method. But input text has a length property. It also has a split method associated with it. So that means you can call it by doing the string dot the method, or the string dot the property. Do you understand? I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, do you understand? Now, unfortunately, in Visual Basic, it doesn't look quite as simple as this. This, in every other programming language I've used, it's just like this. And usually Visual Basic is easier and simpler than other programming languages, but for this particular situation, you have to do it like this. Okay, you have to do it like that. I don't know why they chose to do it like that, but you have to do it like that. Okay, so except for that, it's the same thing. Okay, so we'll split it. So now, what do you think will be the result of this? Can you, what do you think? So look at this. Here's input text. And what is input text equal to? It's equal to this string. Okay, and what is this string? Today is Tuesday. And now we're trying to split it